Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to review the market analysis for Los Gatos, California for June of 2009. My name is Robert Whitelaw, and I'm a licensed real estate broker in the state of California. I'm also a member of the National Association of Realtors and a certified ePro. Now, if you'd like to get in contact with me, you can reach me at my website, www.soldbyrobert.com. You can also find articles I've written on real estate, my weekly podcasts, and all of my other market analysis information. If you'd prefer to email me directly with questions, ideas, or suggestions, please feel free to send those to robert@soldbyrobert.com. If you'd like to call me directly by phone, just dial 408-852-0525. If you prefer to talk via instant messaging software like AOL Instant Messenger, Google Talk, or Yahoo IM, just use the screen name The Rebel Broker. And for Skype users, just use the screen name Rebel Broker. And of course, referrals are always appreciated. If you or anyone you know is interested in buying or selling real estate in the Silicon Valley area, please feel free to get in touch and I'll help you any way I can. But if you're outside of the area, if you're not in Silicon Valley, I can still help you find the perfect agent for your needs. So whether you're interested in buying, selling, or investing, just get in touch with me and I'll find the perfect agent for you in your area. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the supply and demand numbers for Los Gatos in June of 2009. We're going to start out with those inventory numbers, and we can see we've got a steady increase, and that's what we've been seeing. This has been the trend now for Los Gatos for the last few months, which is actually kind of the opposite of a lot of other communities, which is a little bit of a surprise. Communities that you wouldn't consider as robust a real estate market as Los Gatos are actually performing a little bit better on these inventory numbers. We're still seeing an increase in Los Gatos. Now, we've actually had a 15% increase from June of 2008 to June 2009. So remember, these are all the same month going back to 1999. So you don't have to take into account any seasonal influences. This is the same month. This is just the month of June, looking all the way back to 1999. So at the same time of year for each year, we're polling these numbers. And this is really the best way to sort of compare how we've performed instead of using month-to-month numbers to try and figure out how we're doing compared to previous years. Month-to-month can tell us some trends, but this is the great information to look at as far as how much we've changed over the last 12 months. And as you can see, as I said, we're up 15%. That's 24 more homes in inventory in Los Gatos of June in 2009 than we had in June of 2008. That gives us a grand total of 184 homes currently in inventory in Los Gatos, and that's a pretty high number considering the size of the city of Los Gatos. Now let's go ahead now and take a look at the number of homes that have been listed. Now this is actually pretty good news. You can see that this has actually declined from last year, about on par with what we were doing in 2007. And this basically tells us how many sellers decided to put their home on the market in June of 2009. That number's down 19.4%, so we listed 13 fewer homes in June of 2009 than in June of 2008. That gave us a grand total of 54 homes listed for the month. And that's a pretty healthy number. If we could stick to that number, that'd be nice, but we need to really get the sales number increased in order for us to start making a dent in this. And unfortunately, this month's numbers are not going to allow us to do that. Sales have not increased. In fact, this is the third year in a row when sales have actually decreased in Los Gatos. We had a total of a 17.14% decrease in the number of homes sold in Los Gatos in June of 2009 when compared to the same time last year. That was 6 fewer homes sold. We had a grand total of 29 homes sold in Los Gatos. That number may be 28, so that may actually be an optimistic number. There's one home that is listed as sold, but there's no sales price listed, so I'm not sure if that was a mistake made by the listing agent or if there's really a sale there or not. Usually the price is there. I can't even remember the last time I saw a home that was entered as sold that didn't include how much the home sold for, so that's a little unusual. Now, as I like to do, I like to take this number of homes sold number and the total inventory number and get two different perspectives on the market. Now, one is how many months worth of inventory we currently have on hand. And if we take inventory and divide it by the total number of homes sold, that gives us 6.34. So we have just shy of 6.5 months worth of inventory on hand right now if the numbers froze where they are. Now, while that's not great, that's definitely high, it's not as bad as it was last month. Now, last month that number stood at 9.35 to sort of to calibrate you to where that is in general. The county numbers for the month of it, for the inventory numbers was 3.45 in the month of June. So for the county in general, the average number for the entire county, it was really about 3.5 months worth of inventory on hands versus 6.5 months or 6.34 months for Los Gatos. So that's not terribly good. We're underperforming the county in general, and that's very unusual for Los Gatos, which usually outperforms most other communities in the county. Now, another way of looking at this number is to think of it as a competition number. So if you're a seller trying to get your home sold, this is a good estimation of how much competition you have, because for every home that's sold in Los Gatos, there were about 6.34 on the market. So what you basically need to do as a seller is sort of calibrate yourself to the idea that for every home that sells, there's a little over 6 homes trying to get sold. And that means you need to be paying an awful lot of attention to not just the homes that have sold in your area to determine your price, but also the homes that haven't sold, the homes that are your competition out there, because that's really the perspective of buyers. And so many agents don't pay close enough attention to that number. They very much emphasize the market numbers as far as what has sold in the last 3 to 6 months versus what's your competition right now. So make sure that's a discussion you have with your real estate agent if you haven't already. You should have had it that very first day when you talked about how they were going to market your home when they did their little listing presentation. That should have been part of the numbers you discussed. And if it wasn't, it definitely needs to be a conversation you have as soon as possible. Now, just to sort of calibrate you also to how the trends are. Now, we've gotten a little bit better in Los Gatos, which is good news, but the county in general also enjoyed an improvement. When we look at those months of inventory on hand number, as I mentioned, it was at 3.45 for the county, and that's down from 4.5. That's very robust market type numbers. When you're under 4, that's fantastic. As far as I'm concerned, that's a healthy number, 3.5, about 3.5 right now for the county. It would be great if we could see Los Gatos performing at that level as well, because I think that's much more of a health indicator for the market in general. Okay. Now let's go ahead and take a look at supply and demand numbers for the past months. This is where we look just straight back, month to month, and see what kind of performance we've been seeing in these areas. And another way to use these numbers is to try and gauge what we can expect in the future. What direction are these going to go in the coming months? Now, here we stand in June 2009, and that's all the way to the right on this particular graph. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that green line, which shows us sort of the general trend. And just like we saw with the year-to-year numbers, this is showing a general trend in the upward direction. Now, why is there variation on this chart? Well, the reason for that is because it's affected by seasonal influences. Things tend to go up and down given winter, spring, summer, and fall. In the wintertime, we tend to see inventory numbers drop as people take their homes off the market for the holiday season, and then right after the holidays we start to see that number ramp up as people prepare to try and get their homes sold in what's typically the hot market of the summer season. So of course that's what we see here. Now you can see that in the ramp up from December all the way to June, we had a general increase in inventory going all the way up to March and April, and then things sort of started to drop a little bit for both May and June. Now, last year, you can see that we had sort of the same sort of performance. February, March, April, we saw increases in inventory, actually rather dramatic increases last year. And then in May, a little bit of a decrease. And then in June, another small decrease. And as we moved forward last year into July and August, we saw continuing decreases in inventory. I think it's pretty reasonable to expect the same sort of thing. Why do I expect it to be about the same? Well, we're not seeing a change in trend. There's no real dramatic reversal in the way inventory numbers worked last year versus this year leading up to this point. So we can sort of put some faith in the fact that we could probably expect the same sort of performance in the coming months. So we'll go ahead and just put that as our estimate for what we're going to see in July and August for the Los Gatos area. Now, the inventory change here was we had a decrease in inventory of 1.6%. That's 3 fewer homes in the inventory in June compared to May or last month. Now, that's actually pretty normal during this time of year. We expect to see inventory numbers drop. So that falls in with what our expectations should be. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the inventory numbers. We can see that number has also decreased. We normally see a little bit of a boost or at least a jump in, say, from between January and March. We saw that last year, as we saw from February to March an increase. February to March, we saw an increase this year, and then a little bit of a decrease. Saw the same thing this year, a little bit more drastically so. So that's likely to stay the same going forward for the next couple of months. We can see that in June, we stood a little bit less than we did in May. We actually had a decrease of 6.9%. That was four fewer homes listed in the month of June than in the month of May. So what do we expect to see? Well, if we look at last year, again, we didn't see any variation really in the trend, the overall trend. We can expect to see July probably pretty flat, same number of listings as this month, with a little bit of a drop in August if we want to go as far forward as 2 months. Let's go ahead and take a look at the sales numbers. We can see that sales actually increased from May to June, 45%. That was 9 more homes sold in June than in May. What did we see last year at this time? Well, if we look at June, we can see that it was actually flat between May and June. Last year's summer season seemed to come a little bit early, although here in Los Gatos we did get a little bit of a boost in sales in April. Last year, it was much more of a steady ramp up. March and April, both steady increases, and then a nice big jump in May, and June had a pretty good sustained amount of sales. We'll see how that pans out this year. It would be nice if we could extend the season a little bit, since we saw not quite the amount of sales we would have liked to see so far, particularly in May. Maybe we'll see it extend. My guess would be that it will be the same or a little bit less next month. It's really about as far as I'm willing to go, since the trend didn't fall in exactly with what we saw last year. Sales are just soft. That's really the way it is. One possible contributor to this is that we just see so many short sales and foreclosures in Los Gatos, and that's really where so many buyers are being drawn, that's why the numbers are where they are for Los Gatos. Just because so many other communities that do have higher short sales and foreclosures have seen a lot more buyer action as people take deals. But we'll see that in the coming up slides here, we'll see that we're still seeing action at just about every level in Los Gatos, which is encouraging. So the sales are down, buyers in general are down, but at least the spread of where they're buying is pretty good in Los Gatos, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, let's go ahead and talk about short sales and foreclosures. We'll start with last month's numbers. Short sales, we had 0 last month. Foreclosures were 20%, and conventional sales were 80%. So that's actually a pretty good news, I think, for the market in general. Now, and as I said, it's a double-edged sword. It's good because that means there's a little bit more health in the home market in general, as far as just folks not being forced out of their homes or being faced with maybe challenging financial situations. So that reduces the number of short sales and foreclosures, which I think is a good thing. But it also reduces the attention that the Los Gatos market gets from buyers who are sort of a little bit over-enamored, I think, with short sales and foreclosures. Now, if we take a look at what we got in June, let's go ahead and take a look at those numbers. Now, you can see, again, no short sales. So there were no homes that were short sales in the month of June. Foreclosures made up a lower percentage this month of only 10%. And conventional sales made up 90%. So from that standpoint, it's definitely an indicator of health in that market. But again, because so much attention is being drawn to these short sale and foreclosure properties, I think it's just negatively affecting the number of folks who even look at Los Gatos, where they don't see Los Gatos as a place to get bargains right now. And that's really where folks are out at in the buyer's market. They really want to try and find the bargains. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at home prices. This is going to be some interesting information and maybe not great news for some folks, because we have seen a dramatic drop in price. I think most folks reasonably anticipated this just because of what's been going on with the market in general. Los Gatos really managed to dodge the down price bullet for an awful long time, but it finally came around, and now we're seeing sales prices that are substantially lower than they were at the same time last year. The average home price is down 35.58%. That's $597,677 less than homes were getting at the same time last year, from 2008 to 2009 for the month of June. Now, the average home price in Los Gatos was $1,082,351, so still very substantial, but definitely down from previous levels. Now, here's the interesting number for the folks in Los Gatos. Now, this is the median price, and this gives us a better idea of the spread, or where is the distribution. Now, you can see that in previous years, more homes that were priced below the average price were selling. That's what it means when the median price is showing up below average price, that a larger number of homes that were selling were below the average price. This month, in 2009, we're seeing that the average price accurately represents the midpoint. So half of the homes sold above average price and half of the homes sold below average price as we calculated it here for June. The median price was at $1,080,000. So really very close, only $2,000 off from the average price. It was down 25.52% or $370,000 lower than the same time last year. So I know this has got to be a shock for a lot of folks who see where the levels have gone. We've literally taken Los Gatos average prices all the way back to the, say, 2003, 2002 level. After quite a few years of very robust increases in prices. So what's the takeaway on this? Well, I think that firstly, it's that the market is still pretty strong in Los Gatos in terms of folks who own not having to resort to short sales or banks having to resort to foreclosures. But there's definitely been a huge drop in the market here as far as price is concerned. And I think that, again, competition in Los Gatos is at a peak, and that folks really need to take that into consideration when they're getting their homes sold. Don't just look at past market performance. We're so on the edge now of where this change has taken place. It's really a 3 to 6 month phenomenon here in Los Gatos. So if you've got folks out there doing market analysis for you using numbers that are as much as 4 or 5 months old, you're getting really bad numbers. We've seen this dramatic drop in price. You're going to have some very unrealistic expectations if you just go off of, if you would determine the value of your home just off of a market analysis based on homes that have sold over the last 6 months. You're going to get a very high-end, lopsided estimation of what your home can reasonably sell for in the current Los Gatos market, and that's just as the reality. And if you want to sit down with an agent, or if you want to sit down with me and review what has sold in the last 6 months and look at how folks really misread that data, given the real circumstances in Los Gatos, and folks have had to really dramatically drop their prices. It's really amazing to just watch agents and sellers really misapplying past sales numbers on their properties and assuming that because something 4 months ago sold for X and it was an identical home with the exact same amenities, it should sell for the same. That the reality is it just won't. So you really need to look at not only at those market numbers, but as I said before, what your current competition is. You need to be the best priced at your feature level and at your amenities level. All right, what else have I got here for you on this particular slide? We have the highest priced home. Now, this is an interesting time to sort of talk about some weirdness that happened with the numbers in Los Gatos. We had a home that was listed at $3.5 million that shows itself as sold, but with no data entered for what the home sold for. So I've had to sort of adjust for that as far as these numbers are concerned. That's the first time I've ever seen a home make it into the MLS that says it's sold without a sales price. In the past, you were unable to hit the button to submit it if you didn't have a sales price. So something is definitely up with that. Next month, I'll give you an update as soon as that information comes in. But that would have probably, assuming that sold for anywhere near its asking price, that probably would have been the highest priced single-family residential home that sold in Los Gatos. But because there's no number, I can't really tell you what number it's sold at. Now, the highest priced home that we do have numbers for is at 16201 Azalea Way. That sold for $1,885,000. Its original list price was $2,799,000. And this is another interesting listing on a house because the house was relisted enough times, or some sort of modifications were made to the listing that really changed the original list price as far as what the statistics are going to be. Now, when the statistics get reported to all those folks who crunch numbers all across the state to determine what the market's doing, the number they're going to get is that this home originally listed for $2,369,000. Well, that's really just not the case. If you go back and look at the property, and I'm not real sure how it lost its link to this original asking price, but its original asking price was just shy of $2.8 million, and it basically sold for right around $1 million less than what its original asking price was. So that's a pretty substantial drop someone had to put up with. And that home was on the market for 193 days, and it was listed back in 2008. I don't recall the exact month, but I think it was actually on the market for longer than that. So it must have been taken off the market for, say, a 31-day period of time. But I didn't note that in its history. But be that as it may, they've been trying to sell this thing for quite some time, and it finally did sell for just $1 million under asking price. Now, the lowest price single-family residential home in Los Gatos was at 15660 Loma Vista Avenue. That property sold for $560,000. Its original list price was $799,000, and that was on the market for 65 days. The average price per square foot, $528.51. Last month's average price per square foot was $537.52. So we've seen a drop in the average price per square foot. So what do you do with this information as a seller? Does this figure in 1-to-1? If you bought your home 1 year ago today in June and you want to try and sell it today, does it basically mean you've lost 35%? Not necessarily. It would very much depend on the micro market that you're in Los Gatos, where your home is located. But the odds are you're not going to be able to sell it for what you paid for it 1 year ago. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a look at these same numbers just in past months. Let's see, and this will give us an idea. Again, this isn't something that's giving us a huge amount of information as far as what you should be doing, but it definitely gives us some insights into what the trend was. Now you can see the trend, as we noticed on the year-to-year numbers, is down. This is average price. So if there's a change from month to month, the average home price, as I said, was $1,082,351, and the percentage price change on average price is down 2.6 from last month. So from May to June, average home price dropped 2.6. And the dollar value change was $28,924. So as a seller, does this mean that if you listed your home in May of this year, you need to now drop your asking price 2.6% in order for you to be competitive? No, these are just average numbers to give you an idea of trends and where things are going. But my feeling is if you did list your home a month ago and you haven't had any nibbles yet, you should, on at least every other week or once a month, be taking a look at your numbers and figuring out how many people are visiting, why haven't you gotten any offers, how many people are looking it up on the internet if your agent's able to track those numbers. You need to develop interest, and you need to figure out, particularly if something in your neighborhood, a direct competitor of yours sold, you need to figure out what your home doesn't have that home did have. You need to really be aware of what your competition is. You should be reevaluating with your agent every month the homes that compete with you, so that you need to review the homes that have been listed since you listed your home, find out where they're priced, what their amenities are. Your agent should be a specialist in that area and have been inside of every home that competes with yours. If they haven't, get in there, find out what's going on. You need to look at it from a buyer standpoint if you want to get your home sold in Los Gatos these days. Now, median home price, where do we stand there? Now, as we saw, right on top of each other. These numbers are nearly identical. So the spread of homes is exactly at the average. So half of the homes sold above average price, half of the homes sold below average price. Median price actually increased. So this is one of those interesting months where average price decreased and median price increased. The median price increased 6.72% or $68,000, and there were 29 homes that sold in Los Gatos in the month of June 2009. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how many days to sell we have going on here. Let's see, days to sell has increased to a pretty high level at this point. We've got a pretty steady increase from when the markets really started to go down for most of the areas in Santa Clara County. We didn't start to see things really hit in Los Gatos as far as days on market until 2008, but we saw a really big hit this month. Now, how realistic is this? This is a pretty realistic number. The spread it has definitely gone to a higher level. The highest days on market was 481. The next closest was 335. So we've definitely got a few houses that are at the high end as far as how long they've been on the market. Now, the lowest days on market was 6 days. Between 2008 and 2009 for the month of June, we had a 43.06% increase in the days on market. That's 31 more days to get a home sold in 2009 than in June of 2008. Now, as I mentioned, 0 homes sold before they were ever entered into the MLS. That used to happen fairly frequently in Los Gatos. We had one home sell in the first 7 days. We had 4 homes sell in 8 to 30 days. We had 8 homes sell in 31 to 90 days. We had 9 homes sell in 90 to 180 days, and 7 homes sold in over 180 days. Now, only 17% of the homes that sold in less than 30 days. Contrast that to last month's homes that sold in less than 30 days of 40% of the total number of homes that sold. So we've definitely seen a hit as far as just generally shifting this number to the higher range. So is this 103 days a realistic number? Yeah, to be really honest with you, I'd say that if you're a seller right now, to set expectations for yourself, I think that 90 days to 110 days is a pretty realistic range on how long it's going to take to get your property sold. Now, the more aggressive your agent is, the better your home is marketed, the more accurately priced it is given the competition. You're going to increase your chances of getting your property sold. But what's encouraging about the average and median price numbers we talked about earlier is that it shows that there's activity at all price levels in Los Gatos. So it doesn't mean that you have to be a $2 million house priced at $1 million. It means that there's still action at those multi-million dollar levels, but in competition with other multi-million dollar homes, you need to be competitive. So if you're someone who's thinking, well, my home would be so expensive to sell, there's no way I could get it sold. That's not necessarily the problem in Los Gatos. The problem in Los Gatos is strictly just not enough buyers to take up the slack of the number of homes that are being listed, which means you need to be the most attractive home at your price point, given the amenities that you have to offer. All right, now let's see. Let's go ahead and move on to the same numbers, but now this will just be for past months. Let's see where these go here. As again, this is a general situation where in the county in general, these numbers have been on the rise, decreasing a little bit. Now, one thing to note about days on market is that you will often see a boost in days on market when you see a big increase in the number of homes that get sold because you're selling off inventory. Now, that's not happening here. We're seeing a big growth in the amount of inventory we have. So these numbers really tend to be based on reality, on what the real numbers are doing. It's just really taking that long to get homes sold. Does this really teach us anything? No, this is one of those numbers that tends to fluctuate in a way that even looking at what the trend was last year doesn't help us out a whole lot. But we did see an increase between May and June of last year, and we saw an increase this time around. Moving forward, my expectations would be that we'll see probably relatively flat performance as far as days on market is concerned. But then remember, as we head further into the year, we're going to see some big increases. October will really be our last month to see low numbers as homes that were purchased in August or September that had longer escrow periods come to a close. Now, from month to month, between May and June, we saw a 37.33% increase in the days on market. That's 28 more days to get a home sold in June than in May. And that really wraps up our numbers for us here. Let me go ahead and show you where all of these homes were located that sold this month. You can see a pretty good spread. We've got homes pretty much spread around all over Los Gatos, nothing really focused. We saw a little bit of a higher level of action between Blossom Hill and the 85 as we come closer to the 17 freeway, but really nothing here that indicates a big trend, but pretty good spread of homes that have been sold in Los Gatos. Now, I do appreciate you taking the time to review these market analysis. Again, I'll put my contact information up here just for reference purposes. I won't bother reading all the way through them again and boring you with that. But do give me a call if you'd like any help. If you'd like to figure out the value of your property, I'd be happy to do that for you. And, of course, referrals are always appreciated, not just for folks who want to do business here in Silicon Valley, but also anybody in the country who's looking for a good agent. I'd be happy to go through the process of finding the perfect person for you. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you all next time.